News on Sunday is a socialist publication.
News on Sunday believes that everybody has the right to the basic necessities.
News on Sunday will support the right to self-determination of all peoples.
News on Sunday...
News on Sunday recognises that Britain is a society based on the unequal ownership of wealth, prosperity and power.
News on Sunday will be internationalist in outlook.
News on Sunday... I'm sorry, I just can't take this seriously, I'm very sorry.
News on Sunday believes that the root cause of the present troubles in Ireland is the British presence in that country.
News on Sunday will support workers and their trade unions when they take industrial action.
News on Sunday opposes the imposition of suffering on animals. I'm sorry.
By the mid-80s, the left in Britain was on its knees.
Can we keep close together, please? 5 or 6 wide.
Thatcher was riding high, having swept to power for a second term. The miners had been defeated after a year-long strike. Large parts of the state sector were being put in private hands, and unemployment had reached 3 million. Faced with the tabloid press as right-wing as the government, committed left-wingers began to wonder whether they could rally support for their cause if only they could publish their own newspaper.
At the time, you're talking about a newspaper environment where Mrs. Thatcher was queen, and there were very, very few newspapers or media attacking her outright, and even that which might have, the Daily Mirror at the time, was run by Robert Maxwell. So I do feel the left didn't feel it had anywhere to go in the media.
We needed a paper that would tell the truth. It might be seen as our truth, what do you mean by truth? But it was going to be the truth. At least there was going to be another side of the argument, Paul.
There were significant kind of people on the left, councils, trade unions, etc., who felt that Thatcherism had been, an enormous period of defeat for the left. And it would be good to have something that was pushing over left-wing ideas, campaigning against kind of growing poverty, against homelessness, against unemployment. People felt that that would be, good for the left and might help, give the left some renewed confidence.
OK, ready. Let's do it.
The left-wing tabloid that would eventually emerge from these debates was News on Sunday. It launched in April 1987 and went bankrupt just 2 months later. It was one of the boldest and most expensive business ventures ever attempted by the far left in Britain. And it was a disaster. Alan Hayling was the man behind it. Hayling had left Cambridge University with a double first and was a member of a small left-wing faction called Big Flame.
Big Flame was a Marxist organisation, and hence it saw working-class struggle, working-class action, working-class consciousness as being key to getting rid of inequality in society. And so it had quite a big focus on working alongside, working with working-class organisations.
In 1976, after a brief stint on the BBC's graduate trainee scheme, Hayling got a job as a production worker on the Ford assembly line.
Those of us in Big Flame had quite a rank and file perspective in everything that we did. So I ended up working for what I thought was going to be 3, 4, 5 months in Slough at the Langley truck plant.
Well, there weren't any things like Big Flame Directive, you shall go and work on the shop floor. There's nothing like that. There were people did those kind of things to remove themselves from the ivory tower of wherever they were and get a sense of what it was like on the front line and to do what they could there.
Alan never ever let on that he'd had a particular degree. He'd never... It didn't seem important.
As it turned out, Hayling stayed on the assembly line for 8 years. While he was there, he mobilised Ford workers in their struggles with management and even sang backing vocals on this strikers' song.
And it's 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? You can stop your 5%, 'cause that won't pay the rent. And it's 5, 6, 7, picket in the factory gates. It's 1 in the eye for Sonny Jim. Whoopee, we're gonna win.
While Hayling was living the political life at Ford, Keith Sutton, who had a working-class background and had left school at 16, was working on Fleet Street. He was dreaming of a life of political activism.
After it was about 10 years of Fleet Street, I took a year out, and I guess, if you like, that was the beginning of a more political awakening in me.
His background, I mean, he'd been a traditional young go-getting reporter who'd done very well, got into Fleet Street, but had eventually decided that he didn't like what he was doing and had opted out. So he had a very radical streak to him.
I was involved in direct action community politics, would be the best way to describe it. I was involved in a campaign to restore cheap fares to the buses, so we hijacked a bus in the name of democracy. Another event that I recall was taking over Centre Point in the name of the homeless.
In the early 80s, Hayling gathered around him a group of like-minded left-wingers, including former Maoist and fellow Big Flamer Henry Stewart and revolutionary socialist John Hoyland. Drawing on their analysis of class consciousness, they decided to try and develop a mass-market left-wing newspaper.
It was to be a tabloid. It was going to be, you know, the first tabloid-size, fairly serious newspaper.
As far as its politics was going to be concerned, it was not going to represent any particular left-wing sect or party or anything like that. It was going to be oppositional, it's going to be campaigning, but it's also going to be have ideas in it.
It was about actually having a radical newspaper that would expose things in society, that would make a difference, that would be a rallying call for people. It was a very exciting idea. Instead of going on one more demo or doing some more leaflets, actually looking at where opinion is formed and playing a central part there.
This initial group of socialists, libertarians and revolutionaries now sat down and spelt out their programme of left-wing beliefs. The document they wrote became a set of rules that was to be the newspaper's editorial charter.
News on Sunday believes that everybody has the right to the basic necessities, such as housing, education and healthcare,
in the form of public services and a minimum income sufficient to maintain a decent standard of living.
News on Sunday recognises the dangers of damaging the ecological balance of the world. The paper will advocate the conservation of natural resources, habitats and species, and will support appropriate campaigns and movements.
With grants from the GLC and the Greater London Enterprise Board, Hayling and his friends put together a dummy newspaper to illustrate their left-wing vision. The dummy was market researched, and the thrilling news came back that the paper could expect to sell over 1 million copies a week.